Hey guys, your boy Eli and my good pal
It's your boy Kelvin. Hello.
and our lovely guest,
Hello, it's
Gus.
Gus.
So good to have you back, Gus. How you been? You been good?
I've been good, getting
Oh,
by.
yeah, I mean, it's the end of the world.
You know, I'm not here for a long time, but
It's
I'm here for
the
a good
end
time.
of the world as we know it.
Yeah, you missed the note there, but sure.
I know, but I got the I got the lyrics through. So.
That's all that
Yeah,
matters.
just
hmm
take this time during quarantine to work on your singing. Um,
All right, so we're speaking of which, Kelvin,
Yeah,
you don't know much about comics.
I don't. I recently started getting into comics just last year, I'd say. So I think we're approaching 1 year now since I just started getting into comics.
It's
My
like our
first
1 year anniversary.
Yeah. By the way, it's been a year since the release or the start of the Geek Centurions, and oh yeah, that's right. I was gonna post my little recap video on the IG. I'm gonna hop
Yeah,
on that
we're
later.
gonna get to it later.
Yeah, I'm gonna hop on that later. But yeah, it's 1 year already has passed since we started this week. Actually, this week we started a couple of days ago. From a couple days ago, exactly 1 year
It
ago.
was this past Sunday at the time of this recording.
Yes, that we that we started and we uploaded our very first episode of the Geek Centurions, and from then,
Been
we've
a wild
gotten
ride.
yeah, it's been crazy, and
I like
we've
that we're both still alive, Kelvin. I know we said a couple of times that you and I were almost killing each other.
oh no, yeah, like there are a couple of times when I just felt like just both of us would have walked away, but we somehow still managed to just put our differences aside and still come
I
together.
want to make a joke, but I'm like, you
So.
know what? Let's not go there.
And
But
once
anyways,
again, Eli
Kelvin,
has the dark jokes just stored in his box
hell,
of
I've thought about killing one of you. I'm not gonna say which one, but you know who you are.
fantastic.
I'm gonna miss you, Kelvin.
It's good knowing you, Eli.
Love you.
Anywho,
I'm
but
saying
yeah,
So
Kelvin.
Kelvin, you're just getting into comic books. Why is that?
I'm just getting into comics just because I've always been very intrigued of like, okay, yeah, I've seen, like, for me, as the geek lover, nerd lover of all things, of all eclectic things, anime, um, was it sci-fi, superheroes. I've always just seen the shows. I've always just seen the movies. But obviously, where does all that come from? Comics. The predecessors would be comics. So I've always had some burning questions I've been wanting to ask y'all to, since you guys seem to be more proficient
And
and
I
seem to
mean,
have a
yeah,
more
you
knowledge.
were like, how is this like in the movie? And I'm like, Kelvin, that is a rabbit hole that I don't think you're ready for,
yeah.
and I don't got the time for
Yeah.
because
I mean, I was
work.
ready. I was ready to stand up and say something during Age of Ultron when Quicksilver implied that he was the oldest of the twins between him and Scarlet Witch. Like, what? It's not true. Scarlet Witch was born first.
Did you just rip off Adam Warlock's whole thing with the Mind Stone and Vision? How dare you, sir?
How very dare you,
So,
Where's my
with that
monster?
being, with that being said,
slapping me with that glove?
so as y'all can tell, if you guys can't, if you guys are listening to this, Eli and Gus are visually expressing their discontent of how some characters, to some examples of characters were reiterated in the visual versions of their respective characters, and in this case would be Vision and the Quicksilver.
Quicksilver.
Yeah, Vision and Quicksilver. So getting straight into it,
Don't
I
get me
do
started on
have what's up.
don't get me started on X Men and how they keep teasing us they're gonna give them the suits and they don't give them the suits.
Oof.
Wait, what?
Whenever they tease in the X Men movies like, hey, they're gonna wear the comic accurate suit.
That never
For the
happened.
next movie, they never
That
do.
never happens. Yeah.
And they just were all black with like a couple yellow stripes.
super gritty and like, yeah. Whatchamacallit? Yeah, getting into it though. Diving right into the questions I have for today's episode. Start things off. So, the origins of the Marvel in DC. Which now, okay, I'm gonna get some perspective from each of y'all, and I just want to know, just guys, as someone who is starting specifically within this region of comics. Yeah.
Do you want to know Do you want to know just the origins of why there's a versus, or do you want to know the origins of each
So
comic?
more of like which is better and why, and like where does the whole Marvel versus DC,
Okay.
where did it start? Yeah, where did it start? Start things off. Yeah, Eli.
All right. So here's the thing you got to remember, Kelvin. This is essentially it's a brand thing. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So it's like, hey, like I'm more of an iPhone guy. I got an iPhone right here in my hand. But Big Gus might be a Samsung guy. He might be more of into that kind of thing. Exactly, Kelvin. Really, there is no origin to.
It's a brand thing too.
Yeah.
The first,
essentially, it's just like. Go ahead, Gus.
I'm sorry. The first two major businesses or first names in anything will become the rivals automatically. It's like the whole debate with Star Trek and Star Wars.
Yeah.
I mean, you can pick a side, but in the end, they're both completely different. They have two completely different feels to them, and they cover two completely different aesthetics and different messages, or even just different archetypes in the sci-fi genre. Whereas Star Trek is trying to explore like fringe science and more hard science, whereas I think I'm using that term correctly, it's hard science and soft
they
science.
tend to have more actual science in.
Where they tend to usually have actual science, whereas Star Wars is more, it's science plus lore plus a bit of a mysticism behind it. It's
in fantasy.
two completely different fields altogether. It's the same way with Marvel and DC. They were the two big comic book companies at the time. Nobody had really started a big comic book company around that time, and they automatically became each other's rivals.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they like Gus was saying, they go through different things. Personally, I like both of them. I want to say that. I mean, I have different ideas of why each one has their sets of goods and the other one has a set of bads.
I will say I lean more towards Marvel, but I do dabble in DC.
Yeah,
I got my start in DC.
Yeah, the way I've always phrased it is that DC tends to have the more memorable stories because they emphasize more of the stories, like Dark Knight Returns, All Star Superman, basically any of the Batman stories. Those are like
that's another thing about Marvel and DC. In order to get into Marvel, you kind of have to really go back a long ways. Marvel is one of those comic book series that they will stick to the story 100% and keep going with it and going with it and going with it. It's gotten to the point where it can be kind of annoying too. I'll talk about that later. Whereas with DC, it's more like, they'll start a new story or they'll start in a different universe. They'll start in a universe where it wasn't Bruce Wayne who died that night. It wasn't Bruce Wayne's parents who died that night. It was Bruce Wayne himself, and as a result, his father became Batman and his mother became the Joker. It's one of those situations where they take you to different universes, different timelines, different scenarios where things play out differently and they start the story all over again. Whereas Marvel, it's the story just keeps going.
Yeah, and I have a good example for that. One of the most well-known stories for Daredevil, which is Born Again. It's one of my favorite stories. Is actually from issue 2 something whatever to issue 2 something whatever, because that's part of like one whole story. People will talk about that because it was a specific storyline. But now, if you were to want to go more into it, you got to go back all the way to 2 whatever.
Right.
So that's essentially it. You asked which one's better for us?
Out of the two, I guess this is more of a personal opinion. Which of the two did y'all prefer over the other, Marvel or DC?
Hmm,
I think
that's
I
a
think it's
hard.
four. I love both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
But
also got to realize, as with Star Wars and Star. I'm sorry, Eli. As
no,
with
you go ahead. I think you got it.
as with Star Wars and Star Trek, they cover two different areas. Like one thing that you will notice, especially with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, um, DC tends to play more towards the idea of superheroes with magical powers. Marvel might have Doctor Strange, but they try to explain magic in a more like sciency kind of way. Like Doctor Strange isn't really a sorcerer who's commanding elements and arcane powers that are beyond mortal understanding. He's commanding eldritch energy through, his mind and focusing and training. And, it's much more scientific rather than DC, which embraces the more mystical elements of their characters, like, Wonder Woman being the daughter of Zeus. Oh, spoiler alert if you haven't seen the Wonder Woman movie. I mean, you should by now, but
They keep changing it, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
exactly. Wonder Woman being the daughter of Zeus, or Constantine having magical powers and having issues with demons from hell. Enchantress from Suicide Squad. That's another conversation altogether. But yeah, one of my favorite comments about us Enchantress was Enchantress's costume for Suicide Squad is sexist, but even worse, it's inaccurate.
Mm. Pretty
I'm
fair,
like,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. That,
So,
that, that's that's a fair critic.
it's
and
that
to go
too.
along here, I'll let you finish, guys. But go ahead. I'll say what after when you're done.
It's that two sides of things, whereas one is plays off one thing more than the other. You could even say it with their whole idea of playing off, Thor in the Marvel universe. I mean, you had Wonder Woman, who was from a fictional Greek island, who was the daughter of Zeus, and had a very Greek aesthetic, despite the fact that she was dressed in red, white, and blue. Another discussion altogether.
Other times,
Um, so originally, when they actually wrote the character for Thor and when they were trying to think up the idea of incorporating deities into the Marvel universe, one of Stanley's comments was that he thought that the Greek gods were a little played out, and he wanted to play more to a pantheon that was less represented in comic books and media in general. So he went with the Norse pantheon, which is
Mm.
almost as well known as the Greek pantheon, but it's one of those things between Marvel and DC. DC chose the Greek aesthetic, which is or the Greek stories and all that, and incorporated that into their characters, which is something that is very well known. And Stan Lee decided that Greek was a little played out and wanted to go with Norse mythology, and that's almost as well known as Greek mythology. So he managed to make something really good out of it,
All right.
and we've got
yeah.
Thor.
Nice.
And to go along with what Gus was saying about how they both take things differently. I mean, like I said earlier, DC, I feel like they focus more on they're more well known for their stories, but Marvel was always best known for their characters. You
Mm.
know, not saying the DC characters aren't really relatable, but oftentimes, and you can also attribute this to Stan Lee, he always wanted to make sort of characters that felt real and grounded. That was the big, you know, attention that they got with Fantastic Four. They were a family. You didn't see that much of a family. You had some like Justice League, but they're all just team members. Like they would say, "Hey guys, I'm clocking in and I'm clocking out for work. I'm going home to my family." But no, they all lived together. They had a dynamic. You had like the uncle, the best friend, the husband and
Yeah,
wife. I mean, that's just bare
same
bones, but
thing.
the relationship with each other.
Hmm.
Yeah, same thing with the Avengers. The idea, around the same time in the comic books when Hawkeye, Scarlet Witch, and Quicksilver joined the Avengers, they were at one point renegades or villains, or I think Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were part of a mutant terrorist organization before they joined the Avengers.
Yeah, the Brotherhood of
Um,
Mutants, right?
yeah, and Hawkeye was a I want to say he was either a vigilante or he was just a straight up villain. I'm not quite sure. I'd have to look
I
back
want to say
again. But
Vigilante.
the idea is that they both joined the Avengers around the same time and that they kind of grew up in the Avengers and became part of that family. There's even a comment about Hawkeye that he's always looked up to Captain America, and that he always followed Captain America.
Mm-hmm. So how was that for
Which,
your an answer, Kelvin?
Very, very informative. Yes, very informative of knowing, both sides,
Yeah, the whole Marvel DC thing, it's really just like just fanboys. Not to say that's a bad thing. Like we're all fans. So
yeah,
it's always been like, I mean, well, Batman could beat Captain America, and I'm like, come on, guys, are we really doing this? They'd be pals.
yeah.
yeah,
No, and I definitely got the whole the informative side of both Marvel. Yes, there's a Marvel versus DC, but at the same time, it's like you mentioned earlier, Eli. Both sides have their goods and both sides have their bads
I
about
mean,
stuff,
they've had crossovers before.
and that
yeah.
also has happened.
In one case, Wonder Woman
Occasion.
actually attacked Hercules from the Marvel universe because she believed that he was just as evil as the Hercules from her universe.
You're also
Nice.
forgetting where she almost picked up the hammer, Thor's hammer.
I would believe that. I would believe Wonder Woman would be worthy.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
for
Yeah,
sure.
Superman did it, so why can't Wonder Woman?
yeah. And that's another thing. I've actually been thinking about this a lot. The DC universe loves playing off the idea of their heroes having kids and carrying on their legacy. Batman had a son. I think Starfire and Nightwing had a daughter. Her
Yep.
name was Nightfire. Uh, they
But
just
my
love
boy,
playing off.
Jonathan Kent.
Yeah, they just love playing off that idea of the superheroes having kids that carried out their legacy. I think even in the animated series of the new Batman, Harley Quinn had twin granddaughters
Yeah.
that
Ah,
tried to
yeah.
carry on the
Yeah.
Harley Quinn legacy.
Yeah.
And there's even one episode where Harley Quinn's just a little old lady and she's just like, I bust my back trying to take care of you kids, and this is how you ingrates pay me back. She's like
Quack.
she's like escorting them out of jail because she just paid their bail, and she's just like, this is how you ingrates pay me back. And that's when the spoiler is revealed. They're just like, oh, shut up, Grandma Harley. And everybody's like, oh
It's
my
Harley Quinn.
god, the twins are Harley Quinn's granddaughters.
Dang
And that's
it.
one thing that I feel like Marvel has not really done enough of, because if you look into some of the backstory, those Avengers have been screwing around with each other. Tony Stark alone, Hawkeye has screwed Wasp, Black Widow, Spider Woman, and Mockingbird. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if you want to go into a statement about safe sex practices and casual sex is all well and good so long as it's safe and between two consenting adults, you can
Yeah.
pitch that message until
Uh,
your face is blue. But in the end, somebody here had to have broken the condom and gotten pregnant. But that's just my opinion.
Yep.
I mean, Thor had been off and on again with Sif. At some point, they needed to incorporate the traditional mythology where, Thor had a
yeah,
daughter and two sons with
Spider-Man
Sif.
had a kid, but then the devil came in and took away that kid.
Damn.
Exactly. What was it?
Let's talk about that because I'm about to kill a motherfucker.
What's Cyclops' brother? What's his name?
Scott and so Scott Summers and
No, I'm thinking
it's Havoc. Yeah.
Havoc. Yeah, Havoc was actually supposed to end up with Wasp, and he actually saw a future where they had two kids together, but because of the Red Skull's meddling, that future was no more, and the whole Axis storyline where Havoc actually turned evil and broke Wasp's heart. She was like, trying to bring him back to the.
All right, Kelvin, what was your other question? Let's get this ball rolling.
Yeah. So some other questions I got for y'all. Let's see. Oh, make sure my mic's good. Okay, mic's set.
How dare you question me?
I question who now?
What?
I was like, I question who now?
Continue. Ask your question.
Okay.
Come on.
All right. Next question I have for you guys. About the character developments in comics, like how do writers, artists come up with these characteristics, and for I guess the more notable whether major or minor characters, how does character development play a role into creating these characters, into creating them? Yeah.
Now, if we're talking about mainstream comics like Marvel and DC, Kelvin,
Hmm.
character development is kind of weird.
Character
Weird
development
how?
is it's hard.
It
Okay.
Because
is.
keep in mind, these characters are staple characters. They're like well known. You drop a name like Wolverine, either you come across a um, conservationalist who's working in Australia and happens to, draw a connection between, Wolverine and the actual animal Wolverine, or, you're talking to your average everyday American or European or what have you, and the first thing that comes to mind when you say Wolverine is the Marvel character from the X-Men.
Hmm.
So, having a change so severe with that character that it kind of affects the way that people look at that character is pretty hard.
Yeah.
Like,
I was
that's why
I was also
character
gonna
development, they're trying to keep a lot of these characters, just the same way that they are because they're such a big staple in pop culture.
yeah, I
Hmm.
was gonna say the thing about character development, usually you were used to character development like, okay, here we got a character that goes from this through this through this through this.
Yeah.
You gotta remember these characters have been around forever, and
Yeah.
I think the best way
Forever.
to I think the best way to it's I remember hearing like this idea of how to the best way to phrase it is like, okay, say this, I'm holding a Funko Pop of Captain America for the audio listeners. This is in a toy box. We're all little kids, we can play with the toys.
Superman, by the way, but
You
okay.
gotta put it.
That's
Yeah,
Superman.
you just follow me, follow me. I thought this metaphor was great. um I take the toy out. I imagine whatever story I want to do with Superman. He goes to Krypton, or the remains of Krypton, and does some weird shit. And
And then we have
at the
Captain
end of the day,
America, who actually, this is the actual Captain America Funko Pop.
I got the end game version, but like put him
Yeah.
back, and just to wait for another writer to come in, or someone else, another kid, another writer to come in and do whatever he wants to do, he or
Hmm.
she wants to do with the character. So it all kind of so that's why I'm saying it's kind of like the toy in the toy box kind of thing.
Okay.
Kid, everyone, you put it back where it was, then someone else comes in and takes over.
Okay.
So in a way, you as a writer have a different view of what you want to do with the character that might contradict what I would do. And Gus comes in after you, and he might wants to do something different that either follows yours or just like he wants to do something of his own.
Hmm.
So it's kind of so character development isn't really. It's not. It's not. I'm not saying it's not a thing, but it's more of
It's
it's
easier to
what
do
you
with
want to do with that
characters
character.
that haven't really been such a big staple in the,
Mhm.
how do I put this? The legacy of that comic book industry that are easier to develop. Like if you
Hmm.
look at a character like Wiccan, who's one of my favorite openly gay characters, reincarnated son of Scarlet Witch, he's actually had character development. He's had a costume change that didn't take, a decade to actually, a decade to actually come to fruition. He's, had relationship development with Teddy, his fiance. They have this destiny between them, him being the heir to the Skrull Empire and Wiccan being the next incarnation of the Demiurgia. It's this complex storyline where they, kind of have to part ways, and that's actual character development because Wiccan hasn't really been that big of an influence on Marvel or been really the face of Marvel like Captain America, Black Widow, Hawkeye, Thor, Hulk. I mean, you can even look at it like characters who have died. They tried killing off Wolverine like what 2 or 3 years ago, and it didn't take.
Hmm.
He was encased in adamantium. Basically, this is like Marvel's way of saying he's encased in adamantium. He's dead. He's dead. There's no changing it. He left a will. He told Peter Parker to help out, around the X-Men mansion. He basically left everything, he was just dead. He was dead. Dead, dead, dead. And even that didn't take.
Hmm.
They found his adamantium casing broken open and found a perfectly revived Wolverine one day, or Kitty Pryde found a perfectly revived Wolverine, which is suiting because he kind of saw her as an adopted daughter at some point, or he was a father figure for her at some point in the
Yeah,
X-Men mansion. So
and
uh,
I was gonna say, adding on to Gus. I'm sorry I had to interrupt you, but like that also doesn't mean like characters still don't go through something. I think when I think of character development, I think of, well, in the big two, Marvel and DC, I think of it's gonna be very Marvel wise. Flash Thompson. I mean, Kelvin, you pretty much know him as the bully of Spider-Man,
Yeah.
but you probably don't know that he's actually a war hero. He's actually Peter Parker, Spider-Man's biggest fan.
Yeah.
He's actually ends up becoming actually becoming Peter Parker's best friend, really,
Mm.
afterwards, because he ends up growing up and seeing stuff that he never got a chance to see. When he went to war, he understood what was going on. He didn't like it, and it changed him. But he wanted to be a hero because of Spider-Man.
Mm.
He ends up
yeah,
becoming Agent Venom, and he ends up dying a heroic death to save not only Spider-Man but all his friends.
Mm.
He goes through development, but if you never read the comics, you probably just think of him. Oh, he's just the
He's
he's
like
the,
he's a, he's
the
a,
guy
he's that typical he's that
Peter Parker
typical
took out
school bully
group.
that
Yeah,
constantly punks with Peter
one of
Parker.
the
Yeah.
one of the most well-known story arcs in. I'm not saying it's most well-known, but it's like he goes through, he changes throughout the story.
Mm. Okay.
It's like there's a reason why some people say, like, you know what, Flash is my favorite Venom of all time.
Mm.
There's a reason people say that.
Yeah.
I mean, bringing it back to characters who've been resurrected. There's one character in the Avengers. His name is Anthony Druid. He's a sorcerer from England who's picked up druidic practices. There was this whole storyline where he became kind of dark and tried to interpret druidic practices himself, and ended up getting himself killed. He had a son, but the basic idea is only recently did he come back alive. He's been the longest dead Avenger of any Avenger, because for a total of 10 years, nobody has decided to resurrect him in any one of the comic book series.
Hmm.
He's been the longest dead Avenger of all time. Everybody else who's been dead at least once has come back within at least a year or 2 years, but he's managed to stay dead until recently for 10 years.
Okay.
That tells you
Yeah,
how much of, how little investment people had in his character development, or how much people were willing to, just see his character development end right there with his death and corruption by interpreting druidic practices and all that.
yeah. I
Mhm.
was gonna say it's a little harder because, like Gus said, these are staple characters that have been around for so many years.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to do
Yeah.
something new.
I doubt
Something
either
new.
of you have even heard of Anthony Druid.
I haven't.
Mm-mm.
One of those,
Yeah.
like I said, this is a big world that sometimes someone that says, oh, this person did the story better. This person is actually doing a pretty good job with it. It's kind of hard to do something new and fresh,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and that's why
Ileana.
it always depends on the writer, because the writer, it always takes over.
Yeah.
Like Spider-Man has had like so many writers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
He's gone from
and
high
right
school
now it's like
student to
last time it was a dude named Dan Slott. But I
yeah.
think it's a lot easier for like independent comics from like Image and stuff, because like they have like a beginning and the end. For Marvel and DC heroes or what characters, whatever, it's more like, I want to say a story about this character. Let me say it, and then when I'm done, some other dude can handle it.
Nice. So what about in that case? I kind of have a small piggyback to that. What about the whole like? So I'm pretty sure you guys have heard, both you and Gus have heard of this term, but I guess recycling of characters. So in this case, Marvel, you got the billionaire playboy philanthropist. Marvel, you got Tony Stark. On the end, you got Bruce Wayne, Batman. On what about and then same thing goes with the idea of the American justice or the American superhero, Captain America, Superman. What about those
So
two
here's
or the
the thing,
concept
Kelvin,
behind
here's the
that?
thing.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. You gotta realize that argument has been said like so many times, like
Mm-hmm.
they're kind of ripping off each other.
Yeah.
To an extent, they really are, but in reality, it's more like, let's do our own take on this character.
Yeah.
Because like a lot of people say, Tony Stark and Batman are the same guy. Really, it's more like Tony Stark and not Tony Stark. It's Batman and is more similar to like Daredevil or Moon Knight kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Or
It,
Night
like,
Owl.
Or Night Owl. Yeah.
Night Owl from the Watchmen series.
Yeah.
He was like
Yeah.
a play on the, he didn't even really show his wealth. You'd have to do more research, like if he really even had that much money, but he was
I would say it
basically,
was more of a Blue Beetle ripoff.
yeah, but he was more Batman, just in the sense, he inherited the Night Owl, the mantle of Night Owl, being that superhero, and he had everything, the Night Owl,
Mm.
what was it? The Night Owl's gadgets, vehicle,
All his
Mm.
tech.
he just all his tech, yeah,
Yeah.
basically that. And it was kind of the same way with Batman, but the only difference is that, compared to Batman, he's less of a millionaire playboy and more of a shy, quiet,
Rich boy.
studious, shy guy who didn't really get the girl, whereas Batman, anytime, any day could get the girl.
Yeah, I mean it's easy to say like, oh, they're basically the same character. They're really not. I mean, there's a reason why you don't see that much of us. Like a lot of people like to think Superman and Captain America, but they're most of just their ideal wise because they're kind of like the heart or like the soul of each.
Yeah, it's an archetype.
Yeah, it's an
The
archetype. You
rich
see that in every
character,
story.
the patriot, the agent,
Yep.
the anti-hero, the vigilante, the guy with no powers, the guy that relies on tech, the guy that relies on magic, the guy that relies on mutant or metahuman powers, or that is enhanced in some way. It's an archetype, and it's something that you can argue about, and something that you can argue about how it's interpreted and how it's used. But in the end, it's
Okay.
their archetype to use.
Fair enough.
It's really, like I said, it's not really stealing. You can see a similarity in a bunch of characters.
Yeah,
It's just
there's a rich guy in every comic book, video game, movie, TV show.
Iron Fist is a rich guy.
The immortal Iron Fist. Iron Fist is rich, isn't he?
Yeah. Rand Corporation.
Yeah.
Danny Ram. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Okay. So that was actually a lot different thought that I had in between. The whole, are they really ripping each other off? It was a lot of different thought that I had. But okay. Nice. Cool.
I mean, design wise, you can say that, but like archetype wise,
it's still different. Okay, so I guess moving on. I guess now we're going into the more. I guess for me now, this is going to more characters that I want to know more of. Like, is there more to the character than what you typically hear from the character? And starting off, what's up? Okay, with Peter Parker's luck. Some people call it dumb luck of the whole. With great power comes great responsibility, and how that that famous quote, coming from his Uncle Ben, saying it to him. Oh, what's up? I figured it didn't. I was always told. Yeah, I was always told that it came from him, but it wasn't. But where, like, how does that quote?
like it came from him
Yeah,
in the movies and all that, because that would make more sense than just the narrator saying.
Yeah, how?
Somewhere around.
Yeah, how does that? So how, to you guys, to y'all's interpretation, how does that whole quote of with great power comes great responsibility fit it? How does that relate to him, Peter Parker? Because he's either been really lucky with taking that quote, has been really lucky, or he's just been like, it's been a shit show. It hasn't been going his way.
So Kelvin, here's the thing you have to realize about why Spider-Man is probably well known and why that quote relates to his character.
Yeah.
What is one of the most known thing about Peter Parker as a character, not relating to Spider-Man? What is a very fundamental thing about Peter Parker as a character? He is the everyman.
Yeah.
He has responsibilities. He has a lot of stuff to do. Dude goes to school. He has a job. He has a family.
Yeah.
He has to take care of his aunt, who at this point, really, I'm surprised is still alive, despite the fact that she looks like she's 800.
And she's had many iterations of Aunt May.
And she's dated a lot of guys. My God.
Yeah.
Doc Ock is one of them. That still gets me every time.
Wait, I'm sorry. What?
Yeah, she dated Doc Ock. They
Oh,
almost got
that's
married.
lovely.
Hey, it was an actual loving relationship.
Hmm.
Just, things didn't go well.
I mean,
But
figures.
but the whole idea is that he has this power, but he has to know the use of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's literally the whole issue of why Uncle Ben died. He has this great power. He just kind of focuses on himself. He was being a dumbass teenager, a dumbass kid.
Yeah.
Was more caring about like, hey, I need money to do all this stuff and that. Let me go to a wrestling show. Let me appear on talk shows. Let me do all this weird shit. Oh, this guy didn't give me money and he ends up getting robbed. Well, fuck him.
Yeah.
But that guy ends up hurting someone close to him. He had the power to do something good, but he wasn't responsible for it. That's and when he does that and it affects his everyday life, that's why things don't go so well for him. He has a date with, say, Mary Jane, Gwen Stacy, Felicia Hardy, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But he can't do it. But he can't make it in time because he has to save someone from Green Goblin, Doc Ock,
Mysterio,
Sandman, or whatever.
Electro. Yeah.
It doesn't matter who the villain is. He has the power to do something. He has to do it, even if it screws up his life.
Yeah.
That's basically the whole gist of that, in my opinion. I don't know, Gus, you can take over from now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you got to take into account the fact that Spider-Man was the young kid character in this universe.
True.
Like, there's one comment in the Young Avengers comic book series that when the Young Avengers were fighting crime, the concern was that they were still kids, they were still in high school at the time, and Peter Parker made the comment like, "What's the big deal? I mean, I was around their age when I started saving people too, and that was Spider-Man's situation. He was the first kid to be put into the space that a lot of other people wanted to be put into, or a lot of fans might have wanted to be put into. Now you see a lot of
He was
comic
if
book
Robin had
characters.
Batman.
Huh?
He was Robin if he didn't have Batman.
Yeah. And well, he could have been Robin to Iron Man, but there was still some distance. Iron Man still had his shtick going on, and Peter Parker still stayed, the
Yeah, they
friendly
didn't get
neighborhood
along
Spider-Man.
really, unlike the movies.
Yeah, they butt
It was
heads.
more Mr.
But
Fantastic.
it was one of those it's one of those situations that they can play off of now too, like
Yeah.
an insert of another younger character who starts out like Spider-Man did, fighting local crime and being the local hero and looking up to Spider-Man in that situation.
Mm-hmm. So how was that for an answer?
Wow, yeah, I never, I never thought of it that way.
Oh, how that for entertainment?
Are you entertained?
Are you not entertained?
Yeah.
In this case, I was.
Spider-Man,
Yeah.
A lot of people just really think of him as this kid, but that's why a lot of people don't really realize that his more of his greater stories wasn't when he was in high school. It was when he was in college, and he had to do all this extra. Like we're all either former college or still in college. You know how much shit we got to juggle.
Oh my god!
Imagine being a superhero on top of
that. Jeez. Okay, so that's where the whole with great power. Okay, that now it's starting to make
the
sense.
idea of the great power of great consequences.
Yeah,
with it is the risk.
Is how he's able to juggle all of that and still, yeah. I feel like in a way, one of the recent movies that came out, like I know it's not comic related, but one of the recent movies that came out was Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse when they introduced Miles Morales. I thought that was a great. Exactly. I thought that was a great example of the whole great power. Great power comes great responsibility. I thought that was a great iteration of that.
Say it. Don't you dare say it.
Say what?
When he was like that?
When he's like what?
When the older Peter Parker was like, don't finish the whole great power, great responsibility.
Yeah. He says, don't finish that. Yeah, I thought that was great. Yeah, that was
screwed over his.
And then with each of the characters, like, all right, let's take it back to the beginning. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like one last time, let's take it back to the beginning. I'm like, okay.
I grew up with three Spider-Man movies. I already know.
Yeah. All right. So that's a great answer in terms of like now I really understand Peter Parker on a different perspective, on a different front now. Going to another character that I've always had particular interest to is Kyle Rayner, one of the other Green Lanterns. So obviously there's been
I want to say he's the
multiple.
second.
What's
He's
up?
maybe the third.
I thought he was the fourth because they already introduced like the recent ones because it was Hal Jordan, John Stewart, Guy Gardner, and
But
then
John Stewart was way later.
oh really? After Kyle
Yeah.
Rayner? Huh. I thought it was Kyle Rayner
Yeah.
like after, or he was
No,
like
no,
the
John Stewart was like. So it's
Hal,
I'm forgetting the name of the first.
Hal Jordan.
Hal Jordan was the first.
Uh huh.
He was either Guy Gardner or Kyle Rayner came after.
Okay.
And then it was John.
Huh. Okay. So in Kyle Rayner's, I really want to know where his origins begin because I know for Guy Gardner he was kind of like he was kind of like the backup to Hal Jordan because Hal Jordan had to go off and train a whole new like I guess batch of Green Lantern Corps recruits. So that's how Guy Gardner came in. Hal Jordan was a former Air Force pilot. John Stewart was a former U.S. Marine. So where does Kyle Rayner's origin starts or goes, and what's his role? As now yet another Green Lantern from Earth.
So he's the second one.
Mm-hmm. So where does his origin and his role starts?
I want to make sure I was right. He became Green Lantern after the whole Coast City explosion that made Green Lantern go evil. And so he was a struggling comic book artist. Hey, I know that feel.
Yeah. How fitting.
How fitting.
Yeah.
It says every artist. And, essentially, they end up choosing him for the next Green Lantern, and he just sort of went off and did cool stuff.
Okay.
I will say this because I haven't read that much about Kyle Rayner.
Yeah.
Except with more some of the stuff that he's been doing recently.
Mm-hmm.
I know the artist had more fun with his Green Lantern powers because you know how you're used to the big punch and
the big giant glove or the obscure like object or whatever.
So,
yeah.
Kyle Rayner, because he's an artist, he took that shit up to 11. Like, oh, there's a meteor or comet coming? Okay, let me just imagine with my ring myself in a giant winged Pegasus knight armor, jousting motherfucking dude knight, ramming that comet. And I'm just like, all right, all right, you got me. I'm in.
So you were for it or against it?
And I do know he ends up being the White Lantern, who's like the most powerfulest lantern ever.
Yeah. So are you for that idea or against that idea? Like because he was a struggling comic book artist, he was able to take his characteristics as the artist and now iterate that.
Why would I be against that?
Okay. No, I was just curious. I'm
saying like the Green Lantern can make anything from his mind.
From will, yeah. From willpower, yeah.
That wouldn't make sense.
Yeah.
Gus, what are your thoughts?
Your thoughts on Kyle Rayner and his origin?
I really have no thoughts on Kyle Rayner, to be honest.
Okay.
I was gonna say, I think he's a product of the time, especially since he was in the 90s, I think, right?
Yeah.
Which is why I was really surprised when you said that. Oh yeah, Kyle Rayner is actually number 2. I'm like, really? I thought Kyle Rayner would be like the more newer Lantern, and John Stewart was actually the most recent
one. The newest one is that Mexican chick.
Jessica Cruz.
Yeah, that's the newest.
Yeah.
And then there was and one guy, and then I think John Stewart was. Then I want to say Guy Gardner was third. Then it was Kyle Rayner. Then it was Hal Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, they made. You know how I know he was the second one now? Because in the Superman animated cartoon, he was the one that got the Green Lantern power.
Okay.
Because this is the thing I found out about the animated shows. They used a more up to date character. So by the time of Justice League, the animated series, John Stewart was on, so they made him the Green Lantern of the
Yeah.
team. And for the longest time, Wally West was the Flash, so they made him the Flash of the
Yeah.
TV show. Wasn't Barry Allen; it was the Flash. It
Mhm.
was Wally West,
Yeah.
which is why it was like, oh wait, that was Wally, and
Yeah.
that's why Wally West is the strongest Flash of all time.
Mm.
Because fuck Barry, he was dead for the longest.
Mm. I can see that. Yeah. All right. Cool. Cool. All right. So now going into the more. Okay. Now keep in mind, you guys might get a little heated just because, or maybe not. But why is it that apparently, from what I heard from other comic book friends, that the New 52 origin story or New 52 rebirth of DC is so hated? Why is that particular arc?
So New 52 and Rebirth are two separate things, but yeah, New 52.
But what? Yeah, why is New 52 hated so much? What's the beef? What's the what's the word? What's the beef on why New 52 has such disdain within the community?
Over this one?
What's up?
I'll say, I guess you want to take this one, or should I take it?
Either or.
I mean, the only thing I can think of is, or one of the biggest points that I can think of is DC's constant use of the theme grimdark, which is basically an idea of these superheroes going evil or going, being corrupted by their power, and them just like using it way too much. Like DC sponsored or owns Watchmen, and Watchmen was one of an iconic superheroes going dark situation, or superheroes going dark to try and save
It
the
was the
world, or
original.
the original, yes, the original grimdark. And it worked out so well that DC thought that they would do it so much with their other heroes that it just kind of seemed overplayed, like Superman turning evil or turning against America. It just didn't make any sense. The whole point of Superman was that he was the ideal he was the golden boy. He was the thing that everybody aspired to. He was the best hero out there. He was, the defender of humanity. He had all this power and he used it for good. He wasn't, having all this power and corrupted by it and wanted to use it, for evil or something like that. It wasn't part of his original story, and the abuse of the whole grimdark genre is kind of one of the things that people really don't like about this.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna just picking off of what Gus said. I know for a fact that a lot of people just hated the more darker, younger, grittier versions that they try to make the characters.
Yeah.
Like Superman, he was raised by his parents to be like, this is the right thing to do, this is the best thing to do, and the New 52, they were more like, hide yourself because we don't know what would happen to you, and so he becomes a little bit resentful. His parents end up dying, both parents, not just the dad, in a car crash, and he could have saved them, but he was like, oh, but I couldn't. And then like you get this horror of sort of kind of what you see in Man of Steel, in the way he's kind of portrayed and being kind of like angsty and stuff. That's kind of how you see the Superman as go along in the New 52. Yeah. So it's more like you kind of made these characters more grittier and to fit your idea of like what like Gus said, like the sort of Watchmen thing, because the whole gritty thing, man, it goes back into the 90s. Because everyone, you ever wonder like why those 90s characters look so edgy and gritty? Well, it's because of Watchmen. They try to copy that over again.
So you're saying like Watchmen was essentially the original predecessor of the whole gritty superheroes going or superheroes have a dark side
Watchmen,
too.
Though Watchmen had a message. It was basically saying, yeah, these guys, if they were real, they'd be crazy as fuck. They wouldn't be people you would trust.
Yeah.
He's even said before, like Rorschach. Yeah, no. If you're someone that's like, oh, I identify with Rorschach. The writer has said, if you identify with Rorschach, I want you to stay the hell away from me.
Yeah.
Because he is not a character you should, idolize.
Yeah.
You shouldn't.
Uh-huh.
And, people do, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
That was the problem that he was kind of writing about.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a very much like, it's the way the characters were treated kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
I mean, some of them were kind of cool. Like the one I read for Wonder Woman was pretty cool. But that's more like she was kind of like the naive chick. there was a point where she found out that the Amazons kidnap seaworthy dudes, have their way with them, kill them just so they can produce more women. And if they were boys, we either kill them or we just give them to Hephaestus to take care of in his iron workshop.
Well, shit.
Yeah, it's like that. One
Well,
of them is like,
shit.
I'm about to free my brothers. In there, all the dudes are like, no, we like it here because this is the only way we were saved.
Yeah. That kind of brings it back to the whole the Watchmen series. Now the Watchmen series, and now that I've been watching, and I've seen the movie itself, and now I'm been watching the Watchmen series. How the origins of how the Watchmen came to be. Pretty much when I found out specifically with Silk Spectre story, I'm like knowing what no finding out that one of the characters is actually the second Silk Spectre and her origins. And I'm like, oh damn, like it was dark. Like basically the comedian sexually assaulted the first Spectre.
Also, the writer has been questionable in the way he writes women, but that's a different story entirely.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So it makes sense now. So why so many people have their particular disdains of the New 52.
And I'm not saying most of them were bad. It's just like,
but it's notable. It's notable. Yeah.
We get it.
It's like stop shoving it in our face. Yeah.
I don't mind my sad.
Yeah. So kind of transitioning, piggybacking off of that now, going into like the fandom itself. Like, what's the deal? What's the deal with the toxicity and the comic book fandom? Like you mentioned earlier, like say, oh, Batman would win in a fight against Captain America, and if someone else is otherwise like, no, you're wrong, you're stupid, but similar toxicity. What's why is it that there's toxicity in the fandom? It's specific in the comic book world.
Guess you want to take on this one?
On this one?
Yeah, you want to start us off with this?
Why is there so much toxicity in the comic book fandom?
Is there any? I can't really say.
Mm-hmm.
There's much more toxicity in like TV and movies, and that really brings the toxicity out in comic book fans. As opposed to comic books itself, they kind of either stay silent or just get on the internet. There's no really, as far as I've seen, there's no real big toxicity aside from, what you might see on blogs or forums or, angry comments on the wiki page or Comic Vine or stuff like that.
Yeah, I know like online they've been pretty kind of vocal and stuff, because they either, here's the thing about comic book fans, they're very conservative with their characters. Like if you change one big aspect of that one character, there's gonna be an uproar.
Okay.
Yeah.
About stuff.
Which brings us back to the whole, staying true to the characters in the original comic books.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean that's where I've seen the toxicity, wherever it's how these characters are treated, or how they don't like the way they write certain characters. I know probably the best one is how some people reacted to the whole Captain Marvel thing, like, oh, she's the strongest Avenger there is.
Yeah.
There's other Avengers who are just as strong, but that it really doesn't matter because that's it's a character, that's one person's interpretation of it. Kind of stuff. I know it's been hard for some females in the comic book industry.
Yeah.
I've seen that, but I can't really talk into that because I'm not someone who's been to that experience. Yeah, there's toxicity in anywhere, dude.
Yeah,
you can find it anywhere. You'll always find that one guy who's like really upset with the story or whatever, and just like wants to yell about it, while another guy's like, I'm just gonna put this back in there and just gonna go pick up another book and just move on with my life.
Yeah. So it's either there is that one person who really just go ham with all the critiques of, points out everything that's wrong with it, or it's just like, okay, if you don't like it, then okay, just move on, to a different story or to a different genre altogether. So
Yeah, I mean, it's like the toxicity in Star Trek or Star Wars. You know, it's
Yeah.
not as
Yeah.
vocal. It's there.
Mm-hmm.
It's there.
Okay. All right.
Some guys just
So
the way the characters are.
yeah.
I actually have a good example of that, but I'll get to it in your other question.
Yeah. What about the independent comics and how really how they got started? You know, like how like comic book artists, like in like indie comic book artists. I guess Eli, you're considered yourself a indie comic writer.
Nah,
How
not really. I never published, but sure.
Yeah, I mean, you've dabbled, but you've dabbled in art and writing the story. But where did this all come from? Like now, people like saying, "Oh, one
So,
day I want to
Well,
create my own story now."
so Kelvin, here's the thing
well,
you have to realize,
Yeah.
and I think Gus is going to go into it more.
hmm
yeah.
Okay, so the indie comic scene, like how they got it all started. Like
So
just one day,
here's the
like,
thing,
someone
Kelvin.
says, one day I want to create my own story. I want to create my own art.
So here's the thing, Kelvin. You have to realize it's a whole publishing thing
hmm
when it comes to independent scene.
Yeah.
Originally, back in the days, back in like the golden age of comics,
hmm
back in the '60s and the '70s and all that good stuff, comic book companies were everywhere. They didn't
Yeah.
hit the high as they do now with the two big companies.
hmm
So essentially, at some point, some companies did better than others, and that kind of like dwindled out a lot of the competition. Hence, why we have Marvel and DC, the two big guys.
hmm
And essentially, some people didn't want to work for Marvel or DC, or they want to tell their own stories. That's how the independent scene sort of happened, and a lot of them tend to be Comic Cons, um, local shops that sell comic books.
hmm
Like for us, would be Third Planet and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's where you guys would go, and you probably get yourself you either self-publish or join a publishing company,
Mm.
and they would go hand it out. Like Marvel and DC, they're a publishing company; they publish comics, so that's how it would work. Um, who was the first? I can't really tell you because like
Oh no, yeah. Like
they've been around
if you
forever.
understand who was the first comic indie comic artist, that'd be like a literally looking for like a
Well,
page
there's
with
no real point to looking for it because you just find them.
yeah. They'd just be out there.
They're just there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now I mean like later on more. I think nowadays you find more independent comics because you kind of get tired of the whole like superhero stuff and you want to branch out to other stuff. Not saying like the Marvel and DC haven't dabbled into like more deeper or complex stories,
hmm
but usually you'd find stuff that you probably wouldn't see from Marvel or DC. I even brought some books to show off. I got the Paper Girls, which is a story about like a bunch of like girls from the '80s jumping around, time traveling to all these crazy stuff.
Mm.
Snot Girl, I love the art for that one, which is like Instagram models and stuff. And then you got like this Motor Girl that's basically about a girl and her PTSD drama.
Mm.
Which I mean, like that's kind of how people have stories they want to tell, and it's a lot easier to tell your story at an independent publishing line
hmm
than like at the big company where you have to like find ways to work around it.
Yeah.
Gus?
What's your take on that?
I don't really have much to add there. I'd say it's pretty much the same, you know.
hmm So pretty much
It takes
what?
a lot for it takes a lot for even an indie comic book company to get started too.
Yeah.
I mean, you think of companies
Yeah, I
like
mean,
Dark Horse, anything,
Image.
hmm
independent series like Comixology. There are even indie comic book series that are basically just focus on porn.
There's a lot of those.
It's a lot of those,
Mm.
but more actual like websites that actually sell out these comic book series the same way that DC and Marvel sells theirs out from different writers and artists and stuff like that. And it takes a lot for an indie company to get started in the first
Mm.
place.
I know this is one
It's
company,
even
right? Yeah, I know this is one company that's it's starting to gain popularity, so to speak. I'm not sure if they have I'm not sure if they've already established like their own like they are technically like a company, but and they have established their own stories, but I don't know if they have their own comic book lens because they're trying in a way to try to get into their idea adapted into a series or movies. Like they've already had like all of the storyline and the concept art, like written and drawn out. But now instead of just doing comics first and then do like a movie or TV adaptation, they've gotten like straight into it.
All those are just different things to do.
Yeah.
It's a lot of
Hmm.
jumping around, like a lot of hoops just to do stuff.
Yeah.
It's not as simple as say I have a story I want you to do. There's a lot of even legal stuff that you have to go around.
Yeah.
Stuff that I had to end up learning about. That was I was like, oh man, that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, like the story, Image Comics is probably the third biggest comic company. They mostly focus on like a lot of independent comics because they started off that way. Image branched off because a lot of artists from Marvel and DC didn't like the pay, so they're like, let's go and do our own stuff. We know how the company works. Let's go and do our own stuff. That's where you get like stuff like Youngblood, Spawn, kind of things. But even they kind of end up falling apart because like they weren't that great. Yeah, but it became a big sort of place for the independent writers to go.
Yeah.
That's often how a lot of writers start off with. I got a book. It was the first. I want to say it was the first book written by this guy who was a guy I follow called Donny Cates. He wrote this book and then he immediately got hired by Marvel because it was so good. It was a good way for them to find talent, really.
Okay, so the series that I was thinking of, it was called what's it called? It was called Kydro, and they like I said, this particular company, they created their own series and everything, but like of course having to go through all of the
self-publishing.
Yeah. Okay. So it's really publishing really is like the big deal. Is like the big thing when it comes to like for indie comic book artists or just indie creators. Really.
Yeah, because like the thing is, if you want to tell your story, you have to partner up with a company that's able to publish your story, or you just self-publish. That's the whole.
Or self-publish. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, there's no real where did the indies start off. They were always around. Heck, they probably even started off, as Gus was saying, for porn. That's how it always starts off. That people wanted to tell stories, they want to do this and that. That's how it starts off. There's no real. This is the first, independent comic book company.
Yeah.
Or like independent comic stuff. Really, just like they're all around, and hopefully they survive or they get eaten by the big two.
Gotcha. Okay. So now I guess speaking of porn, what about speaking of porn, sensitive topics in comics.
Jesus Christ, man, calm down.
Like so. Sorry. So more of like the ideas of the whole, whether there's sexual abuse, both physical or mental, alcoholism, violence, those kind of sensitive topics. Like how does that play? How does that play out? To the readers and to see like does topics that have or do tell or share of sensitive topics, do they tend to do well in comics?
What do you think, Gus? I'm gonna let you take the helms and I'll take it.
Really, like really sensitive topics, yeah. Like you tend to.
Wait,
what's up?
Ask the question again.
All right, so sensitive topics, right? So alcoholism, abuse, sexual themes, violence, like blood and gore, those kind of topics playing out in comics. Do they tend to do well, or how does that play out?
I mean, we already played with any of those topics. I mean, if you look into a lot of the origin stories, I mean, Iron Man was a notorious alcoholic before he, got over it. Scarlet Witch, her powers got activated when she was living in her, I forget her citizenship status is like what is it? It's the nation of
She's
Latveria. No,
she's a gypsy.
She's a gypsy. Sokovian in the movies, but Sokovia. Her powers were activated when she was sexually assaulted in her native Sokovia at one point. Captain Marvel was one of the first female characters to go through an unwanted pregnancy. There are plenty of examples like that. The problem is that we don't touch on them anymore today.
Yeah.
or that we try and shy away from them because it'll call down. We have a lot more means by which people can get their anger out and call you out for even suggesting or even trying to represent that kind of issue or representing even a specific group incorrectly. Like we touched on this last time I was here, the topic of a gender non-binary characters in the what
That's
was
right.
it?
Yeah.
Marvel.
In Marvel.
The
Yeah.
Marvel universe. And the fact that there had never been a gender non-binary characters at all, and the fact that the way that they were represented them just seemed totally incorrect and could really
Well, that
confuse comic
Safe Space was
readers.
Safe Space was one of the characters' names. Was one of the name of the non-binary characters was Safe Space.
Safe Space was
Yeah.
the one who they were gender non-binary, but their sex was male.
Mm.
Yeah, I was gonna. It's interesting because like back then they, and I think even still now, they kind of try to hide a lot of that stuff because there was the whole comics authority kind of thing, where
Yeah.
like it was basically the big censorship kind of thing.
Yeah. Like what's
Because I
okay,
forgot
what's not okay to show
yeah,
on.
because it started off because of this one guy. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but essentially he wrote and he took this to Congress that a lot of troubled youths tend to read comics that sort of glorified violence and stuff like that, and that they shouldn't really promote more positive stuff. And that's what he wanted.
Yeah.
But it ended up being like more watered down stuff. That's where we get like a lot of the cheese that we know, like, oh, Superman's old pal Jimmy Olsen, he turned into a giant dragon again or whatever. The Kung Pao, the Adam West stuff.
Yeah.
Now that they try to like move into more of a sort of hiding the fact. Like I know one big thing with Spider-Man that has to do with Harry Osborn is that he was a drug addict.
Yeah.
Dude liked to take pills and stuff like that. And even now, you still kind of see that, but you tend to see more of a touchy stuff. They're still there in comics. I mean, Jessica Jones had to go through her whole, yeah, I was mind controlled and raped
Yeah.
repeatedly, and no one knew about it. I had to handle that myself.
I mean, the Sentry too. One of the he was basically a parody in the Marvel universe of Superman. He was a crack addict that broke into a science lab in Canada and got these superpowers that were basically synonymous with all of Superman's power. Turning back to alcohol, which
Yeah,
if you know
Tony Stark.
anything about Hercules and traditional mythology, Hercules likes to get drunk. Okay? He drinks, he doesn't drink to excess. His alcoholism doesn't necessarily become a problem until one of his centaur buddies accidentally gets killed. Again, this is in traditional mythology, not in the comic book series, but that's just one of his staples. He is bisexual and a functioning alcoholic, but Marvel kind of made it seem like oh, he's turning back to alcohol. Ooh, what could this lead to? Or which is like it's not even that big of a deal.
And I was gonna
Yeah.
say you tend to find more. I think the more upfront ones would be the independent scene, where like
Yeah.
I can't remember who published it, but there was a comic I heard about it a while back. It was called Black AF, where essentially like all of a sudden all the African Americans in the United States suddenly had superpowers, and how would that react to? And I don't remember what happened, but essentially there was some good and there was some bad. I can tell you that.
There was
As is.
Yeah.
that.
And like,
Isn't
like I
that
said,
is
they're
isn't
always
that
trying
a
to hide
series
it. So
now?
like, I don't even know really.
If I may recommend
Buck
something,
AF. I feel like it's a series now, or it's been developed into a series.
Something in the fandom, something in the fandom area. It's a TV show on HBO that came out during the quarantine. Actually, it's called "I May Destroy You." I just love the title. It's
Well
this
then.
black woman who's trying to speak out against assault because she was assaulted at one point, and she's living in the UK. She's played by Michelle Cole, and I really love her. I really love the actress that plays her, and I really love watching the trailer. I also love the title, "I May Destroy You." I need to write that on a profile for myself somewhere, like my Instagram profile, Gus Ciotti, "I May Destroy You."
Nice.
I know one good example, and I have the book right here with me right here, because like this started a whole controversy, but a lot of people didn't realize the the connotation of what the writer was trying to say,
Mm-hmm.
and that was this whole Secret Empire book where they the whole Hydra Cap thing, because the idea of that book of what they did with Cap was that essentially it was realizing now that there is a whole sense of white supremacy in the US
Mm-hmm.
and essentially making this symbol of American what America should be and tainting it by turning it into a symbol of basically a Nazi symbol, and that
Yeah.
is essentially what that whole story is about. Like you have like Captain America is he's a Nazi basically. He's Hydra again basically Nazi, but essentially his whole point was that this is like a message of like white supremacy taking over and corrupting things that we hold dear as Americans, kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
And
was it good to use Captain America as something like that? I
that's the
mean,
thing. It was using Captain America that
He
way.
is like a major superhero, and he is white, blonde, blue-eyed, Aryan by
Mhm.
definition. But if you read into the movie, even the movie itself, just when the Red Skull was trying to say that we're the same, and Captain America just kind of turned away from that and just said, "No, I'm just a kid from Brooklyn,"
Yeah.
and that really pissed off the Red Skull because
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like the fact, I think it's the way it was delivered with with Cap. I mean, it's a great message. At the
Mm-hmm.
end of the scene, it's basically at the end of the comics, basically this battle between Hydra Cap and our old Cap. This idea of like this battle for the soul of America kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
he got
And
trapped in the Hydra Cap's head, and it took
hmm
the Soul Stone to
the
like
explanation was
make
weird.
fun of
I
it.
like the book. But, there's some stuff that like okay, I can see like you were having troubles, but a lot of people tend
I'm
to.
all for tricks of the mind, and just your own reality playing out in your head, but that kind of got confusing.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah, I
All
know.
right.
But one thing I did find funny is that a lot of people kind of get on the writer for writing that.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, at the same time that he was writing the Steve Rogers Captain America book, he was also writing the Sam Wilson Captain America book, which was his more political book.
Oh,
Like
nice.
he literally had a
Sam
Black
Wilson
Lives
as Captain
Matter.
America. Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
like he literally had a Black Lives Matter storyline
oh boy.
where like this black superhero gets arrested for something he didn't do,
Mm-hmm.
and Sam's like trying to vouch for him, like no, he's actually a good guy. Like
Yeah.
they won't let him go because of an obvious reason,
Yeah.
and he ends up getting killed in prison, which causes a whole movement.
Oh.
That, yeah, and it's
So did
and it
all
kind of
that all that
truly
all that came out years before what's happening now, right?
got a good 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, at least. But it still addresses it basically follows that agenda of the whole like, okay, it was, acknowledging that, it's a yes, Captain America is Captain America, but he's white, blonde hair, blue eyes.
Well, you're missing the point.
Yeah.
The whole idea is that so in the story of Secret Empire, what led up to Secret Empire is that the the Hydra sort of altered Captain America's history so he would be Hydra,
Oh, yeah, okay.
which is why I'm
they
saying,
basically warped his mind, made
yeah.
him believe that his mother was a Hydra agent, and that his birth was all this plan through Hydra. It's basically this convoluted plot, as Hydra usually
So they
does.
basically pulled a
They were
Bucky on Captain America, where they brainwashed him,
Yeah, but
so to
it's more
speak.
like there's a lot more like superpower, cosmic power. It's using
Mhm.
the soul stones, just
Okay.
manipulating his mind. It's just
It was the Cosmic Cube, but yeah.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
still,
But
it's
essentially, it's that idea. It's like I was saying, it's that idea where, hey,
it's a
this,
message of America being corrupted.
yeah,
Ah.
So Captain America being corrupted, but the real America, the real American value, the real idea of everybody is included, everybody
It's
needs to be fought
free.
for,
Yeah.
everybody is free, is still somewhere in there. We just need to get it out and fight it out and
Mm.
get rid of whatever evil ideals may have corrupted the old America.
mhm.
It's that kind of message.
Hmm.
But the way that they play it out, it's kind of
Hmm.
meh.
Yeah, and coming from coming from the same writer who wrote this sort of Black Lives Matter storyline,
Yeah,
you can kind of see where his position was, and that kind of
yeah,
that affected a lot of people. It was like, oh, I don't want to read about this and that kind of stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
it is a sensitive topic,
Mm-hmm.
and that's essentially what I'm trying to circle back into.
Yeah.
That is essentially what we
It's like
do.
you could,
Comics do talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
You were saying,
And
Gus?
Captain America is one of those you warp something like that about him, it's gonna, it's gonna say something. It's like
Mhm.
warping Superman. What people don't really know about Superman is that the original Superman character was written by two writers who were the descendants of Jewish immigrants. And a lot of what Superman is based off of Jewish folklore, Jewish tradition. The idea that Superman is walking amongst the idea that Superman looks like us, sounds like us. He's basically human in all respects, but in practice, inside, he's not like everybody else, which is what you would have had to contend with at that time as a Jewish immigrant or the children of Jewish immigrants, was that you walked amongst everybody else, you looked like the white majority, you
Mm-hmm.
were basically like everybody else,
Yeah.
but the difference was at home, inside, you were Jewish, you
Mm.
were Ashkenazi, you were I forget what the other denomination or the other yeah, what the other denomination is called. But basically that inside you were basically Jewish,
Mm.
and a lot of what Superman is based off of Jewish folklore. That Solomon, the Golem of Prague, stuff like that, where he was like a defender of people. He was the defender of Earth. He was defender of the good, which is basically a lot of what Jewish folklore circled around. Sure, they were defenders of Jewish good, but in more inclusiveness, they were defenders of good in general, not
Mm-hmm.
just Jewish people. So, kind of corrupting Superman like that is kind of, a smack in the face for that ideal because, today Jewish people still do have to hide or kind of have
Mhm.
problems in public
Mm-hmm.
It's one of
with.
those things where I understand your message. I feel like you could have done it better. I mean, personally, I enjoyed it when I was reading it. I still do. I love that message. I feel like but I don't disagree with a lot of people's problems with it, and totally understand. But I mean, like Captain America was always that kind of character that had some sort of political leaning. Like, I mean, yeah, his first
I
issue
mean,
was him
he's
punching Hitler.
Captain America.
They literally had a storyline where they didn't show it was, but it was essentially him reacting to the whole Watergate scandal and finding out that the big villain of it was the president.
Mm.
Like that was the story. They don't show Nixon's face, but it's more like, oh, you're the president and you're doing all this shady stuff and persecuting mutants who are essentially the minority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's so sensitive. It's sensitive topics. There's always in comics, like I said, independent comics tend to be more upfront about it.
Yeah.
While like Marvel, DC, superhero stuff, they tend to be like
Hide behind the bush and
try to be more
I mean, you
subtle.
kind of have to.
symbolism,
Yeah.
that kind of
You
stuff.
kind of have to. It's like with video games. Like, Last of Us 2 is like one of the first ones, one of the first video games besides a couple of indie games with an openly gay main character, an
Yeah.
openly gay protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
That's not something that you're going to see represented a lot in comic books. And, comic books kind of have to represent everyone in some way.
Mm-hmm.
They can represent each group individually, Black Lives Matter, the LGBT community, uh, trans lives too, recently with the Angel comic books. Representing them in those small parts, but it's kind of hard to represent them as a whole without, using some big metaphor or some big story plot or some, representation like mutants or inhumans or something like that, you
Yeah.
know?
Okay. Mm. All
Kelvin, do you
right.
have any more questions? That was a great question.
Yeah, that was good discussion. That y'all two were able to share in that sense.
I also feel like, just a quick side note, mutants have been kicked down way too much lately. I feel like in today's culture, people would be really excited if they found out that their friend had superpowers and was a mutant.
Yeah, and they're still treated like the minority.
Depends if they
Yeah,
can
it
control it though.
relates all too
There's a
well.
reason why Cyclops has to wear those glasses.
Yeah, but still, people would find it cool, People who could be like telekinetic or could like free stuff, or in today's culture, in today's youth, in our group, mutants would be like something that you would consider cool.
Yeah.
If you found
Gus,
out
can you
that
read my
yourself
mind?
or that your friend was a mutant, you would think like, oh, that's so cool.
Can you read my mind, Gus?
Every day, baby.
Oh yeah.
Oh boy. All right, so a couple more questions before we wrap up this episode. Got some here. Oh, here's a good one. So adapting.
Yes, you look in that microphone. What?
As you were saying, Kelvin.
I don't know how does that relate to. Okay. Moving on. I'll be fine. Thank you for asking. How? So the kind of like not the major events, but I guess more of the big, well-known events that we've all witnessed in both comic books and in series. Now taking those events itself and adapting it into such. So adapting a lot of major events that had taken point in comics and adapting them into like TV series and movies. Specifically, for DC, you got Flashpoint, Justice League, Batman versus Superman. For Marvel, you got Infinity War, and Civil War. So how what how do you do that? Like how do you take concepts like that and
You
then
changed a lot of
now
stuff.
make it into like okay like this big blockbuster thing, you know?
Like I said, you changed a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I figured there's a lot of things that like there's a lot of things in the comic book the comics that they tend to leave out and they just have it in
It's not more
the
like they
series.
leave out. It's
Mhm.
more like, hey, we're gonna not do this. We're gonna do this.
Yeah.
Make this one thing seem more important than it actually is.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like what I said about DC and Marvel in regards to magic, whereas DC more like embraces it and just takes it as like, a part of the story. It's magic. It's hard to
Mhm.
understand. It has a lot of laws, and Marvel just kind of simplifies it down. Whereas, the Asgardians, they're not magical deities with magic plus science. They're just, advanced deities using powers beyond our understanding. Uh, Doctor Strange is just using, gifts that he's managed to understand through years of study, which is part of his character, but is not the entirety of his character in the comic book series. It's a little bit more complex. Scarlet Witch's powers are basically just, a result of her being altered by one of the Infinity Stones. It's not actual magic, and whether or not we're actually going to go into the idea that it is actual magic has yet to be seen. We still need to wait and see what they come up with in the future movies or her own TV show coming up. I know
Mhm.
that they're going to introduce the idea of her and Vision having having sons in a recent TV adaptation. I forget what it's called.
WandaVision?
WandaVision.
WandaVision.
Yeah.
I do find it funny how there's a scene that instantly reminds me. Oh yeah, she's the younger sister of the Olsen.
A lot of people tend to forget that. Like she is technically an Olsen.
Yeah, Kelvin, you forgot.
I forgot.
remember
I
asking you,
forgot
like,
briefly
what?
at one point. I'm like, oh wait, she is. She is technically an Olsen sibling. So.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she been done new.
Mhm.
Yeah. Considering how they adapt it, I know in Flash. Well, here's the thing: you gotta adapt it to make more sense for a time frame. Kelvin.
Yeah.
Flashpoint is probably the one of those stories that I know they kind of change up a lot because they go more into deep detail into all this stuff. Like Gus said earlier, way earlier in the podcast, like Joker is Bruce Wayne's mom.
Yep.
Because of
Batman becomes his
whole
Thomas
like,
Wayne. Barry's
yeah,
mom's
and you probably
is not
don't know
killed.
when she pulls a Heath Ledger and just slices her mouth to make it look like a smiley face kind of thing. But and that story was essentially an excuse to like restart the whole DC universe leading in so they can introduce New 52.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
And the
And,
whole
like-
conflict between the Amazons and the Atlanteans. And
Oh yeah, there's that too.
Yeah.
I still
And,
don't
like,
believe it.
There's a lot of things in there.
I still don't believe it would happen, but
Yeah. I know you said Justice League, but really, if they were to adapt Justice League like the way it was, it'd be Starro would be the big
baddie,
thing
yeah.
altogether, and it wouldn't have Batman and Superman.
So what about Batman vs Superman? I know that was a big thing. Comic into like the actual film.
So here's the thing about Batman vs Superman, Kelvin. You have to understand, Zack Snyder chose to adapt two books at the same time. That was The Dark Knight Returns and The Death of Superman. Mostly, it was The Dark Knight Returns. that essentially it wasn't that book wasn't really Batman versus Superman as much as people would think.
Okay.
It was essentially more of, yeah, Gotham went to shit, and I can't be Batman because the law tells me, you know what, fuck the law,
Yeah.
fuck everything. I'm gonna go be Batman again and just recapture my youth, kind of shit.
Yeah.
Let me fight against these mutants and all this stuff. Oh, the government doesn't like that I'm doing this. They're gonna send Superman in here.
Yeah.
Man, I got a group that can help me beat his ass. That's really just it.
Yeah.
The conflict between Batman and Superman isn't as complex as the movie would tell you.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like, look, Bruce, I gotta do my job. I'm sorry, I gotta fight you.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, Clark, but I'm gonna beat the shit out of you first. Even though in reality, Superman would win immediately against Batman.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Not as people like to write Batman versus Superman, but that's because they think, oh, wouldn't it be cool if the one guy that doesn't have superpowers can beat the guy with all the powers?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In reality,
Wouldn't it be
they're just,
cool
like,
if
two
the
of best
one
friends.
guy that everybody thought was, the ultimate hero and the ultimate good guy went up against the ultimate vigilante justice hero?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a reason why we're just kind of like, oh, Batman versus Superman.
Yeah. So what about
that? Wasn't a big plot point in the book.
Yeah. Well, so what
The
about
guy with all the secrets going up against the guy who's enjoyed his time in the limelight more than once?
So what about in that case? What about Civil War or maybe hell, Infinity
The
War?
movie's way better.
Really?
Hell yeah.
Okay. I want to hear your take on why you think the movie is better than the comic.
Both Iron Man and Captain America are assholes that no one really wants to join with.
And
like there is
and you feel like the comic
they give a good reason as to why you should sign up for both, but the people that are in charge are like too much of, they're either big assholes or like, dude, you shouldn't even be talking about that. You're like,
and then the end result, you realize that there was like this big manipulation plot with the Shield being overridden by Hammer and a new Avengers team that was basically the Dark Avengers taking over.
You mean Hydra or Hammer?
Hammer.
Actually by Hammer Industries. Okay.
Hammer.
Yeah.
Oh, even though Hammer Industries was seen as like not really like
Hammer was one of those. It's like Roxxon. You know they do bad, but they keep it under the rug.
Yeah. Okay.
It's because
or
like,
essentially,
I mean, like the one big thing that always gets me is that like Captain America got like all the kid superheroes, and the moment like one superhero dies, can't remember his name, but he was his real name. He was Goliath, who basically like one of those Ant-Man. Lawrence Fishburne's character in Ant-Man 2?
Which one?
Lawrence Fishburne.
Yeah.
The other guy who was like, yeah, his character is the one that dies in the book. Gets like killed by a robot Thor. Because of course. And like the moment like the kid super is like, Cap, we don't want to do this. We don't want to see our friends die.
Yeah.
And Cap's like, well, you're a traitor to the cause.
Yeah.
I don't need you in this cause.
Yeah.
Hey, Punisher, thanks for helping us out. No, actually, I'm gonna beat the shit out of you.
Yeah.
Why aren't you fighting back? Well, Cap, I respect you. Yeah, I'm the Punisher, but I respect you as Captain America.
So
yeah, that's one of the things.
So, which is why you thought the movie iteration did a much better job than the comic book iteration.
It's more of like, and here's the thing you have to understand, Kelvin. When it comes to the idea of Civil War, there's supposed to be like what in the books. What is the reason for Civil War? You got to think about that.
Mm-hmm.
Why is Captain America and Iron Man fighting?
Okay.
What
okay. I mean, I haven't really read the comic series.
The movie.
It's this. Well,
wait, wasn't it the whole registering yourself as a hero? Yeah. Superhero registration. Yeah, that's right.
Essentially, Cap doesn't like the idea because he feels that they have the right to their secrecy.
Mm-hmm.
It's their job to be superheroes. It's their right to the right of
Right, and then Iron Man argues
like,
he's like, oh, okay,
like,
well,
no, we fucked up.
yeah, we need to take responsibility for
He
that.
didn't
Yeah,
fuck up.
like
He didn't.
all
Fuck
of
up.
us.
Look,
Yeah.
No. But you gotta let me finish.
Mhm.
It all started because the New Warriors, which is a bunch of teen superheroes who were doing a reality TV show, fought a dude who was too strong for them,
Mhm.
and that dude ended up self-destructing, killing a neighborhood block. But most notably, it was like a bunch of like kids in a schoolyard
Mm.
that were like far enough away
Mhm.
that still got in the blast radius.
Yeah.
And then like someone comes up to blames Iron Man, and then this whole thing causes about the Registration Act.
Mm.
You get Tony Stark's reasoning, you get Captain America's reasoning. The thing is, none of them prove anything that makes sense to why you should support them.
Mm.
In the movie, it makes sense.
Okay.
You get why Tony's the way he is. You get why Cap is the way he is. You get why they're still following him. It's very complex, but it makes sense in the grand scheme of things once you actually sit down and pay attention.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The comic just ends up being like, let's fight and fight and fight.
Yeah. Okay.
In the end, it just becomes more about them fighting each other, and it's just kind of pointless.
Yeah.
Mm. Okay. So
plus it's like bad writing.
Gotcha. Very nice. All right. And I think one last arc, Infinity War in the comics versus the actual movie.
You want to take this, Gus, or should I?
I think it took way too long for Thanos to die.
What, in the movies or the comics?
The comics.
Movies. He's still alive in the comic.
I thought he was dead.
No. So I know this because I have the
Gus is like, there. What the hell?
So here's the thing. Infinity War is an adaptation of the Infinity Gauntlet book,
right?
Not the Infinity Gauntlet book, Infinity Wars book.
Uh-huh.
There's an actual event called Infinity War, but that has nothing to do with the movie.
Okay.
Just let him die. Good God. Bring me your new villains.
But it's essentially in the comic, Infinity Gauntlet, unlike in the movie, he already has all the stones. Like, he's just trying to do this to impress Lady Death.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because he's in love with her.
Yeah, right.
And you know how the whole movie is essentially like them trying to prevent him from getting all the stones?
Yeah.
And stuff, preventing the big snap?
Yeah.
In reality, the snap is no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the whole, he snapped. It's more like, and people are like disappearing. They don't last long to disappear like they do in the movie. They just like pop away.
Yeah. Poof.
I'm not talking about like people. I'm talking about, hey, where the fuck did Japan go?
Oh damn!
And, like the whole country of Japan has disappeared, and there's nothing but a body of water.
What, in the comics?
Yeah.
Oh shit!
Snap.
What the hell?
Yeah.
Damn Japan! Why Japan? No. Why?
Well, that's to show you the idea. But essentially, like, that's the reason for like the heroes to come together,
uh-huh.
which are being led by Adam Warlock, who foresaw the whole thing coming,
mm-hmm.
and essentially it becomes them trying to get the gauntlet away from Thanos. They ended up being felt because it's one of those where Adam Warlock and Thanos are doing everyone's playing checkers, but I'm playing 4D chess.
Oh god.
Yeah, and the person and like it basically ends up with like Thanos being a good guy at the end. Like literally they solved the whole problem, and like they're all like, good job, Adam Warlock, and Adam Warlock disappears with Pip Patrol and Gamora, and they go to like the farm like you see in the movie.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, where's Thanos? Oh, he's right here. He's just doing his stuff. And Thanos like, I'm kind of done trying to be like a god. I just want to be a farmer. Yeah. And literally he's like, he just sits there, and at the end of the book he just sits there and contemplates, I kind of pity Adam Warlock because he's got all the god power now because he has all the stones in the gauntlet.
Yeah.
But he'll never know like the feeling of having all that of like the level of power that he can have. He's not going to use it.
Didn't that particular scene happen in like Infinity War where like he just like Thanos eventually gets on the stone and he ends up on like some farm planet, whatever, where he just settles, or it's just
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
that,
but that
but
was
it's
after
like
his work was done.
yeah. After everything was done, he did what he needed to
here
do.
he's more like I just want to. I'm tired with all this world conquering, pleasing death. I just want to chill. I just want
Yeah,
to sit there. I just want to farm. I want to take care of my cows.
I have finished my work. I am done. Goodbye.
Jesus.
That's it. I'm not gonna
And
conquer the
then
world. I'm not gonna
Thor
kill anybody. I'm
chops
just
his
gonna
head
sit
off.
down and chill.
Aim for the head.
And then
Ha!
Thor aims for the
See,
head.
but that never. See, that doesn't happen because they don't have that emotional attachment to Thanos.
Yeah.
Because Thanos is more. His issue is like the real protagonist of the story is Adam Warlock and Thanos. They're just more of those two guys together,
Mm.
and that's it. Like this, when the heroes come in and fight Thanos, Thanos already has all the stones. He just like slaps people away, and that's it.
Hmm.
Guys
Okay
isn't
then.
even using the full power.
All right then.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you have to. Yeah, they hyped up the snap because they're like, that would be a good way to show you. We're not telling you the power of all the stones together. We got to show it to you. I think the snap is the best way to show it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we're now synonymous with the snap because it's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
In the book, it was like, that's it. That's it. All right.
Yeah.
That was for you, Lady Death. Oh, I'm gonna fight all the heroes. I beat them. Okay, I gotta fight all the cosmic beings, Galactus, Eternity itself, and all these god level tier monster creatures.
Infinity, entropy, death.
The goddess of love, the goddess of hate, the god of hate.
Well then.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's more crazier than the movie.
Yikes. Jesus.
Yeah, but essentially, it's just the story kind of boils down to like Thanos having the ability to do basically godlike stuff and just realizing it's not working.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like that's literally how it is.
Yeah.
It's not this big climactic battle like you see in Infinity War.
Yeah, in the actual movie. Right. So it's a lot more complex.
That makes for the movie than it does for the
Mm-hmm.
book, where the book is more like, hey, I'm gonna do this for the woman I love. Okay, she don't like me like that. I got to give up, and I'm just gonna go
Yeah.
do my own shit now.
All right.
Not even a woman.
They keep changing her face. They keep making her like have that skeleton face, and they keep making her have that human face. I'm like, just choose one, god.
And then
Yeah.
at one point she has a skeleton face and breasts. It's like you can't have breasts and be a skeleton at the same time. Breasts is tissue. Skeleton is bone.
Bone.
Is bone.
It's a bone.
Brenda!
Hey, Gus, can you throw me a bone over here?
Boy, I wish.
All right. Wrapping up this episode with one last question.
Yeah, because
we definitely went into a good talk with that one. But wrapping this whole episode up with one last question, and also because I am very hungry and I want to eat now. Low key. Will comics be around in the future? 5, 10, 20 years from now? Will they still be around for future generations? Yes.
Yeah, totally.
Come up tomorrow.
Yeah. The comics of tomorrow. Will it still be around? Will it still be around for
Sun
future?
be up tomorrow.
What's up?
Will the sun be up tomorrow?
Yes, unless
There's your answer.
There's your answer.
Okay.
It's
I mean,
comics.
like,
it's an art
here's the
form.
thing,
Yeah.
It's a staple.
Comics have
It's
been around
everything.
forever.
It might
basically.
die down at one point, but then it will come back up. It's an art style. It's an art form. It's an entertainment media. It's like watching live TV today. Nobody really does it. Everybody's just sticking to Netflix and Hulu.
Okay. So
it's
similar
like watching.
Yeah. Go ahead, Gus.
It's like watching live TV, okay? Everybody's sticking to Netflix and Hulu, all right? It dies down, it dips down, it might have a peak again, but that's the same thing with comic books. It had its peak, it died down a little bit, and then it's on the rise, and then in some cases it's like fluctuating right now.
Similar to how like newspaper, newspaper back then, yeah, the actual physical copy of the news used to be a thing, but now it's like, okay, how do we get news? Go online now.
Oh, nobody actually reads the newspaper anymore.
See, that's what I'm saying. It's like people I just don't read it or not.
We still get the news, and like eventually at some point, everything's gonna go. If there's no more comics, it's probably all gonna go digital.
Yeah. Okay.
Everything has a peak and a downfall. Everything has its high point and its low point.
Mm.
And sometimes it has multiple high points and multiple low points.
Okay.
Comics
I
is an
mean,
art form. It's an entertainment media. It's something that could last and exist for a very long time. Kind of like the whole, VR headset things.
Yeah.
That could be the future of video games, or it could be a trend that just dies down, like the Wii Fit, where it was, a big deal. The fact that
Oh
your
God.
motions could control the character or anything like that.
motion
It's a
control.
trend. It could go somewhere or it could die. But the fact of the matter is, with comic books, it's a trend that's just gonna keep having its highs and lows.
I mean, look at it right now. 10, 20 years ago from now, 10, 20 years ago, would you say comic books would get popular ever again? Probably not nowadays because of, let's say, the TV shows and movies. People become more interested in it now.
I mean, I've had
I
this
mean,
conversation with my mother. She said if you would have told me like all those years ago when I was 14 and I had just finished seeing the Star Wars movie for the 6th time, that one of these days I would be buying Star Wars mugs for my kids, I would have thought that was so fucking cool.
Yeah.
exactly.
Mm.
So, it's one of those things in the future, you just never know. If you
I mean,
might tell me that one day in the future, my kids are going to be reading comic books, in a new medium or a new digital platform, and they're going
Daddy,
to
can I
like them
read
as much as
that
I do.
Peterman book? Sure thing, sweetie.
They're going to
Here you
be
go.
all like,
Oh
Dad,
wait, not that one.
Dad, were you there when Spider-Man was still cool? And I'm going to be all like, honey, I was there for his rise and I was there for his fall.
Whenever you talk about the fall, you just have like that PTSD Vietnam flashback.
Oh, God.
He's just like,
I'm playing in the
he's
background.
just like, look off in the distance, honey. I was there when he hit his high point, and I was there when he hit his low point.
Daddy, why are you looking? Why are you looking away? Why are you looking away from me? Why are you looking at the sky?
Go to your room, honey. I'm getting pissed off.
Jeez.
If you
No!
then come down.
Yikes.
You go down to the basement. It's your Spider-Man memorabilia, and you're like,
It's the Spider-Man shrine right before like whatever fall happened. That
Yeah.
is, if Spider-Man does fall. I doubt he will.
Mm.
no, he'll live.
He'll live on. He'll live on in the hearts and minds of the children that loved him.
If Parker falls, Miles will get back up, and then someone else will come in the way.
Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah, but like we said, like it's gonna be around.
Mm-hmm.
It's storytelling.
It's not
there's
going
always
anywhere.
stories to tell.
Yeah.
It's not going anywhere. It's like printed books. I mean, we've been reading articles and online stories for like years now, but printing presses aren't going anywhere.
True.
People are still reading physical copies of books. People are still writing books. Books exist on both physical copies
All these
and
consoles
digital
are going
copies.
digital. I like to hold the disc in my hand, guys. I like to hold the discs in my hand and insert it into the console or PC. That's me. That's me.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
I like the smell
Yeah.
of paper.
Yep. When you open up a new book, you're like, feels so good. So that's all your questions, Kelvin?
Yeah, that's pretty much all. while I hear Gus's discontent of him exhaling, yeah, that's all the questions I have for you guys. And that wraps up this episode of the Geek Centurions. This has been your co-host Kelvin with Eli and Gus.
Tell them where they can find us.
But before we officially go, god damn it, I hate both of you so much. Before we go,
me at the street corner.
I might just keep the joke, but I'll edit everything else out.
God damn it. Okay. Before
like an in joke between all three
Jesus
of us.
Christ. Before we head out, you guys know where to find us. Anywhere where podcasts can be heard. Spotify, Google Play Podcasts, Pandora, Spotify, iTunes, or Apple Podcasts. And if you're on iTunes/Apple Podcasts, slap us with the 5 stars. We greatly appreciate the support. And for our visual watchers, we're on YouTube.
I don't.
We're on the YouTube. Like and comment.
I apologize for nothing.
like and comment on our videos. Tell us what y'all think about, maybe some questions of y'all owns that you guys may have about comics. Just like me, I'm very new into the comic book scene. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down there. And as always, slap that like button, hit that bell notification to get notified on all of our videos that drop, and of course our Patreon is still up and running. I know the well is looking a little dry, but it's still up and running. I guarantee you, and we greatly appreciate any support, even if it's just $1. We great appreciate any support that comes our way to support the Geek Centurions.
Yeah, and like I said,
and our social media
I
too.
feel like we can continue, huh?
Oh, and I was gonna say our social media too. So yeah, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You guys can follow us there for daily updates on like all of our posts and everything.
We'll try to make it more daily. I know me and Kelvin have been trying to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yes.
but by the time you probably watch this, we're already doing them dailies.
Yes.
But anyways, I was gonna say earlier, I feel like we can always come back to do this more. I know Kelvin, you have a lot of questions. I know you asked me once about something, and I'm like, I don't know, man. I gotta look it up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Who knows? Maybe you have questions about.
You have questions, we have answers.
Are you a Betty or Veronica kind of guy?
Yeah. You have questions, we have answers. They're not all right, but we'll pretend that they are.
Mm.
Yeah.
Remember, if I said it, it's true or something.
Well, Abraham Lincoln said that, I'm pretty sure.
If I said it, it's probably true or something.
Mm-hmm. So, guys, it's been fun. This is the time where we all say our goodbyes. Gus, start us off with your lovely goodbye.
Goodbye. This is Gus Ciotti.
Yo, this is your boy Kelvin signing off.
This has been your boy Eli, and this has been another fun episode with the Geek Centurions. And we are officially signing off with this episode. Peace.
Bye-bye.